have a good relationship with Quebec, and we are working with public servants to know what our responsibility is and what is that of Quebec. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. A very nice relationship, Mr. Speaker. For months, the minister says he's been at the negotiating table with Quebec, but there isn't one. And the Quebec minister confirmed it on Thursday. The federal government has been wasting our time for 2 years. Fortunately, we know that the premiers are scheduled to meet in coming weeks. The Quebec budget, as a reminder, is due on March 12th, and we're asking for $1 billion here we're talking about. So is the federal government going to announce today that it's reimbursing Quebecers? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. Mr. Speaker, you know who's not at the negotiating table, who will never be? The Bloc. It's strange to hear such a statement from the Bloc. We are sitting down with Quebec public servants this Monday, and we are talking. We're in discussions and negotiations. It's important to work on both sides, to know who does what. We're going to sit down with Quebec. We have a nice relationship, and we're going to continue that. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. It's not because you're 6'3" that you're up to the task. The federal government must also share the reception of asylum seekers amongst the provinces. Everyone has to do their share. Last year, the federal government finally started to do this, and yet last time we asked them to start again, the minister accused us of wanting to deport people, which would be a crime against humanity. Were the Liberals guilty of a crime against humanity when they did work last year? Of course not. So why don't they get back to work before Quebec's public services collapse? Before the minister answer, I'd like to remind all members to be careful to make sure that there is no targeted comments to a person. The Honourable Minister of Immigration, that's very kind of the member to say that I'm 6'3", I'm barely 6'1", but the question that Bloc has asked is clear, that they are seeking once again to squabble with the federal government, and they're looking to squabble with the government of Quebec, and they found one. So it's easy to conclude that the Bloc is not looking for relevant answers or reasonable solutions. They're just looking to fight with people. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives, the common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop crime. But this Prime Minister, after 8 years, is not worth the cost or the crime or corruption. And the Bloc leader has shown his true colors. Not only does he want to keep this Prime Minister in power for some time, he voted 8 times to spend more money on the corrupt Arrive Scam app. The app, as he knows, was supposed to cost $80,000, and he and the Bloc voted $24 million in additional spending. Does the Prime Minister recognize that he and the Bloc are just not worth the cost? The Honourable Minister of Public Services. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the question, which has already received several answers in the past. If my Conservative colleagues perhaps are wondering, they could ask, how come Canada has seen the highest vaccination levels of all comparable countries? How come we are amongst the strongest of the G7 countries? How come Canada has more than 1 million new jobs over the COVID period? And how come we have been able to reduce poverty by 40% because of the CCB? The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Can the Minister tell me, with this Prime Minister, with the support of the Bloc, has indebted this country more than any other Prime Minister have done combined? The Bloc leader chose to vote for $24 million in spending for the PM's Arrive Scam app. I'm not the one who said this. The Bloc leader himself has said this. He said they're not going to go over with a fine-tooth comb everything the government has spent. They said, take the money, we believe you. It costs very expensive, a lot to vote for the Bloc. Does the PM recognize that he and the Bloc cost Quebecers way too much and that they're not worth the cost or the corruption, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, thank you. When the Quebecers and Canadians watch TV, they can see the attitude of the Conservatives. They're denying the investment that has been done by our government, and we are envied by many countries worldwide. Just last week, I was at the opening of the first Modena factory and it's going to make 100 million vaccines to ensure the health and safety of Canadians for future generations to come. Abroad, we're going to continue to work in invest in our country. Thank you. The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, we knew that the Bloc wants to radically increase the carbon tax, and now we learn that the Bloc doesn't want to do its job. They voted 8 times to increase the Arrive Can budget, and then they said, we're not going to scrutinize everything the government spends. Not only do they want to radically raise taxes, they don't want to do their job. And last week, the Premier of Quebec asked, what's the Bloc for? Let's let the Liberal government answer this question. What is the Bloc for? Once again, I see, and as I've repeated twice before, that questions must be addressed to the government or directed on the work of a committee. The Speaker's having a hard time identifying which member to answer the question, but I see that the Minister of Public Services and Procurement is rising to answer the question. But I'd like all members, when they ask questions, make sure that they are pertinent to the work of the government. The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We understand the conclusion that we're facing because my colleague is very experienced and seems to be having a hard time identifying who is the right person to answer the right question. But I do have a question for my colleague from Quebec. We know that having a policy of hatred or angst is not a good one. When will he go to the town hall next week and explain to Quebec why the Conservative leader said that they were incompetent and insulted everyone?
The honourable member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Everyone deserves fair pay and to be treated with respect by their employer. Yet for flight attendants, they have to work up to 40 hours a month with no pay. That's 3 months a year. All while CEOs of Canada's biggest airlines rake in millions of dollars plus bonuses. And the Liberals, they're doing nothing about it, letting CEOs get rich off the backs of unpaid work. Will this government stop the exploitation of workers and address unpaid work in the airline industry?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Speaker, we have been there from the get-go for Canada's workers. And in fact, we've introduced legislation in concert with the NDP on replacement workers. And we will continue to be there for workers every single step of the day. We have continued to change the legislation to make sure that there's a level playing field, and we will continue to address issues that the member has just brought up, as well as a whole slew of other issues. Thank you very much.
The honourable member from Courtenay, Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, for almost 3 years, the Liberals have let a shipbreaking company in Union Bay bend the rules, putting locals at risk. A boat filled with asbestos is being broken apart in sensitive fish and shellfish habitats, which could cause irrevocable harm and cost 500 people their jobs. The BC government, local First Nations, and residents say the Liberals are failing to protect Union Bay. When will the Liberals finally stop allowing this dangerous activity and further develop shipbreaking regulations to protect our local jobs and our environment?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. Mr. Speaker, this is something that we've been working on for quite some time, actually with the NDP, both through committee as well as with certain members. And we will, Mr. Speaker, in fact, continue to work on this issue and ensure that a lot of the concerns that the member has will be addressed shortly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr. Speaker, global inflation disproportionately impacts low-income seniors living on fixed incomes. That's why it was so important that we reversed the Conservatives' plan that would have raised the OAS eligibility from age 65 to 67 that would have abandoned seniors. We went further to increase OAS benefits for those once they reach age 75. To show how else we're there for Canadians, we launched our new Canadian Dental Care Plan, which will support dental care for up to 9 million low-income Canadians, including seniors. I guess we should not be surprised that the Conservatives are against this support too. Can the Minister of Citizen Services update Canadians on how many seniors have applied and will lose their dental care plan if the Conservatives got their way?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to advise my colleague from the North Shore that as of yesterday, more than 1 million Canadians have successfully enrolled in our dental care program. In 4 days, applications will open up to seniors aged 70 and higher, and in the coming months, we'll open up eligibility for all Canadians. Excellent. This is a life-changing program, Mr. Speaker, not only as an essential part of oral health, but overall health and economic productivity, and I expect that children getting checkups and seniors getting dentures is going to put a smile on everyone's face, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Leeds, Grenville, Rideau Lakes, Thousand Islands.
On one hand, common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. On the other hand, after 8 years, we have an NDP Liberal Prime Minister who isn't worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption, but he needed support for his $60 million Arrive scam. And where did he get it? From the costly cover-up coalition NDP. Right. Now, what Canadians want to know in this scandal that cost them millions is what did these Liberals promise the NDP in exchange for their vote to support the corruption of this government?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issue of allegations of misconduct in the procurement process, we take that very seriously. On the other hand, you see the Conservatives contorting themselves to come up with catchy slogans. While they do so, we're actually doing the work to get to the bottom of what happened here because, Mr. Speaker, anyone who acted inappropriately, there will be consequences, and we have already committed, the President of the CBSA has already implemented changes, but the Conservatives can stick to their slogans.
The Honourable Member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, it won't fit on a bumper sticker, but that member and everyone over there voted against the common sense Conservative motion calling for the Auditor General to investigate their corruption. And corruption is exactly what they found, and that's what they get on that side of the House. On this side of the House, they have common sense Conservatives who will axe the tax and build the homes and fix the budget and stop the crime. So why did the NDP support these Liberals with the $60 million Arrive scam that saw Liberal insiders working in their basement getting paid millions while Canadians line up at their food banks? What did the Liberals promise the NDP?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, on the contrary, we support the work being done by the Auditor General, including the Information Commissioner. We want to get to the bottom of what happened here. Mr. Speaker, the CBSA President has been very forthright in sharing information with the committee. The Minister has spoken with her as well, ensuring that information is being shared because we welcome this work. And as I have said many times in this House, Mr. Speaker, any misconduct in the procurement process will come with consequences.
The Honourable Member from Brantford Grant.
Mr. Speaker, while common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, the NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost, crime, or corruption after 8 years. Canadians are sick and tired of seeing the NDP leader pretend to be outraged over the Arrive scam. Let me remind the House that the Prime Minister needed votes to keep funding his $60 million Arrive scam, and the NDP came to their rescue. Joining Conservatives and voting no would have saved Canadians tens of millions of dollars. Hear, hear. Does the coalition between the Prime Minister and the NDP require them to fund the Arrive scam?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Government House Leader.
I think it'd be useful, Mr. Speaker, if we just move on from the slogans written in the Leader's office for one moment while I address another issue that would actually help Canadians today. On this order paper, Bill C-35, which will guarantee lower child care costs for every single mother and father in this country. That can pass on a voice vote today. Well, that member, instead of taking his orders from the Leader, walk down the office to the Leader's office and tell him, pass C-35, bring down child costs today for Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Brantford Grant.